since the beginning of this interview. If you haven't seen the part 1 and part 2, you need to connect, watch it, and see how I'll use the word evolved to get here. We've talked about Tracey's background. We've talked about her experience working with women. We've talked about her experience in mental health. And we've also delved a little bit into her story. And just backstage, before we came on, we were talking about her book, which she's going to start working on shortly. So please look out for that. Now we're going to be rounding up. Thank you so much, Tracey, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Wow. Let's talk about the impacts. Everything you went through. Tracey, you were in a relationship for over 30 years. Got married at 19, almost 20. Had 2 kids straight away, then had a third one later. And a lot has happened. And you've been able to come to a point where you've said, I choose me. I choose my mental health. I choose what's best for me. I choose my joy. And that wasn't an easy decision. How do you think the 30-year relationship impacted you? And recently, just before you answer that question, my daughter and I were having a conversation, and she said every relationship will actually teach you something. Mm-hmm. It will teach you something. That thing can be good. It can be bad, it could be ugly, but there's always one thing you're going to learn. And the onus lies upon you to make the best of that experience or whatever it is that you have learned from that relationship. So if you look back to the last 30 years, what was the impact of this relationship on you? Physically, mentally, psychologically, socially? How did it impact you? You have the floor.
Oh, that's a loaded question,
I know
Dr.
it's
T.
loaded.
Well, I'll start with physically. So weight has always been an issue for me, and one of the things, the latest certification that I received, one of the my instructor had said, you don't own your weight concerns.
Wow.
You don't own them on your own.
Yep.
They're a product of so many different things, but one of those sometimes is relationship with others. And so I would say physically that would be where it had taken its toll on me, because food did become my comfort in a relationship that was so toxic and broken. And so whether it were nights that someone didn't come home, or whether it was words that were spoken to me, or what it might be, then that was my only kind of recourse, I thought, at that time. So I often I had prayer. I have such a close relationship with God. Sometimes even that I would feel shame.
Wow.
Because it would be like, I married again.
Wow.
Understanding that you weren't going into that relationship just you and him. It was you and
it's
him.
It's the triangle relationship.
And so I often remember what our priest at that point had said to us at marriage prep was, when you both are close to God, you are that triangle. But when there's one, and so I would think of all these things, and I think that's what potentially made me work so much harder to try to find mentors and things for him. So physically, and then every time that I would try to, several times in my whole life, I've had a better relationship with food. I've been working out, and then there was always something from the other person to, why are you going to the gym? Why are you doing those things?
That rings a bell. Oh my gosh. Why are you going to the gym? Why are you exercising so much?
Healthy.
You are too skinny. What's your problem? There are prettier women out there.
Yeah.
Stop exercising.
Yeah. You can exercise at home. I don't know why
you can exercise at home. It's control.
Yeah. And so definitely, and at the time, so I would then, even if I didn't listen right away, it took some of the joy out of what I was doing, because then you were just feeling, so then you would go to your comfort again. So physically, I'd have to say that's the biggest besides being in stress response, we know what that does to us, right? So physically, and mentally, so exactly that, I would keep it together for my girls, for my parents, for everyone else, and then when I would get the chance to be alone, it would just be just, like cry and just bargain and say, why? And what do I have to do, God? How do I have to change? How do I be a better wife? If I'm a better wife,
Oh my God.
if I could be a better wife, would that change the behavior? So mentally it really does, like up until even seeing that counselor, I still didn't quite believe that there wasn't something that I could do differently. And I remember she looked at me and she goes, "My darling." She called me that.
Darling.
And I thought, oh, that's so sweet. I mean, we were almost the same age. She's my darling. No. It was very hard for me to actually say, oh, you know what, this isn't mine. I don't own this.
You don't own it.
Yeah, and so mentally, and what was the other one? Mentally.
Socially, did it affect your relationships
Definitely.
with other people?
Yes. So one of my very dearest best friends, if we just wanted to do anything together,
he didn't like it.
Well, no, he would think that she was trying to pressure me into being more independent, to want to, why are you guys going out? She's just looking for dates and so I didn't allow it to affect our friendship as far as we're still extremely close, but I did stop going some places.
So she stopped going some places. This professional nurse with a wonderful job, a fulfilled life with 3 grown-up children, not still being able to hang out with her friends because someone didn't like it. That can't be right, Tracey.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
over
not.
50. That cannot be right.
And I would counsel other people, like talk to other people and say, like that you can't allow someone to do that to you. But
you
then
can't. But you were allowing it every day.
But I always had an excuse in my mind, and I would even talk it into, oh, he just loves you so much, he's so worried.
No, that's not called love. That's called control.
It is definitely.
That's control. Someone should love you enough to let you grow.
Yeah.
I remember the story of the eagle. We talk about the eagle and the little eaglets. How the eagle will pick up the little eaglet when they're kind of training them to fly. They'll go high to the top of the mountain and drop the eaglet to see how well the eaglet can actually fly to stay safe. And if he's going to fall, then the big eagle will come and help the little eaglet. So the eagle loves him enough or her enough or the eaglet enough to let the eaglet go and to let the eaglet fly and to let the eaglet learn. So if you're in a relationship where you're not being allowed to be, to just have some fun outside of that relationship, then you got to be careful. Sometimes it's a bad tool to control you fully.
And then again, back to being trauma bound. So you sometimes stop fighting about it because you don't want to deal with the aftermath of
Absolutely.
it. So if you go, then you come back.
Then comes a tantrum.
And then there's tantrums and worse behavior. And then when you're worrying about your daughter's being exposed to those tantrums, it's just easier to just not go.
Suck it up and not go.
So,
and suffer in silence, basically. And not do those things that give you joy. And not even be celebrated. It's... Wow. Thank you so much, Tracey. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Like I said at the beginning, we can see how the experience Tracey went through affected her physically, mentally, and socially as well. Let's see how she's healing. It's been almost a year now since you made that decision to choose yourself and to find your joy and your happiness and to disengage from the trauma bond and everything. How has life been for you? What has the flip side been like?
It's just, you feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off your shoulders. Even though I've had some very stressful things happen since with like, big moves with my mom and dad and things like that, and with my children. But I felt like I got this. I can
I
handle.
got this. And
you know,
one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, and not and realizing that, you know, no matter what happens, you'll be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's been a, you know, learning to do new things, going and taking care of myself, having my own list of meaningful activities that I'm making sure that I do.
Awesome.
And then just so much more joy.
Yeah.
Like it's not easy, and
Absolutely.
I'm heartbroken that I don't have that life where I stayed married for the rest of my life. I'm heartbroken that
absolutely.
dream was shattered, but it wasn't real. And the pivotal moment that I realized what I had, that I wasn't going to be okay, was my mom and dad. My dad was very, very sick, and he couldn't walk on his own, so my mom was helping him walk. And he was holding on to her shoulders, and he bent over and he kissed her on the forehead, and he said, "I love you." And she said, "I love you too." And then she helped him back, and we were all helping.
And how old are they now?
So 78 and 74.
And they've been married?
53, it'll be 54 years.
54 years, and they're still helping each other to walk.
Yeah.
And kissing and saying, "I love you."
Yeah.
How beautiful.
Yes. And my dad is when I was younger, he was very old school. Like, he wasn't that, you knew he loved you, but based on his behaviors and his actions. Like, he was like, but mom would say something to him like, you know, "How come you don't say you love me?" Like, teasing. And he'd say, "I told you once on the wedding day, and I'll tell you if anything changes." So he would say that. But yeah, here he is at his most vulnerable moment, and he's kissing her on the forehead and I got thinking to myself, as things are right now, you don't have that.
Do you have that?
No. Never. And if I get to the point where I'm in my dad's shoes, there won't be anybody helping me.
It will be your fault that you're there. Don't forget.
Yeah.
It'll all be about you. You put yourself there.
Exactly. So I just kind of forecasted to the future at that age, being in my 50s now, to what that might look like when I'm in my 70s. And I thought, if I'm in my dad's shoes where he has to look after me, I'm on my own. And if I'm in my mom's shoes, I have to look after somebody that has just kind of sucked everything out of me for all of my years. So it was at that point that I decided that something drastic had to change.
Good.
So, but since then, again, it's hard. I get sad.
Of course.
I don't have the moments every night where I feel hopeless or how do I keep going through this, or it's more of that just it pinches, right?
Absolutely.
It's just that you thought you had something that you didn't have,
just didn't have,
and but that's okay.
You believed a lie.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You did.
Because people, I mean, if someone is a true narcissist, they lack empathy and they don't know how to love.
No.
They don't have the ability to love. Yeah. So one of the saddest moments, I remember sitting just reflecting and saying, God, nobody's loved me like in a relationship, in a romantic relationship. And so I thought, that makes me sad.
Exactly.
But then I would just feel like, but look at the love you do have.
Exactly. God still has that love for you. He has that love for me. He has that love for you out there. You know, no matter what it is that you've gone through or that you're going through or that you're still working through right now, God loves you. And He cannot be happy if you are in a relationship that just gives you grief daily. Do you miss your partner, Tracey?
That's a hard question too.
Or what do you not miss?
So he was away for 4 months, and I didn't actually miss him, and that surprised me. But I think because if I for a moment thought about him, I thought about what it was like when he was there, and so I think it, and then it just became you miss the idea of what you thought marriage would be.
Absolutely. But you miss the idea.
I don't miss any of the behavior. Now the behavior is wrapped up in him. So when I think of him, I think of the behavior.
Exactly. Yeah. And how those behaviors made you feel.
Yes.
Mentally, physically, psychologically, emotionally, socially.
Yeah.
It broke you.
Yes.
There was nothing positive about those relationships.
No.
Or those memories, as it were. Yeah, you had kids together, they're beautiful children and everything, but we got to get to a point where we actually start to think about ourselves too.
Yes.
Where we start to think about our joy, about our happiness, about what we want for ourselves. And recently I put out a quote on Instagram, and I don't know, maybe I haven't, maybe it's next week, but I'll let the cat out of the bag. And I said, do not be with someone, and this is from my daughter, just because you don't want to be alone.
Oh, yeah.
Don't be with somebody just because you do not want to be alone.
Right.
You have to thrive.